So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me in this theatre. We're going to talk a bit about GenAI, analytics, agents, data, a bit of everything data, as you would in an event like this. But we want to do something a bit different. So rather than just being another tech talk, approach thinking about your agent or AI strategy in a slightly different way. And I'm going to do a bit of an experiment, and this might not work looking at the average age of the audience. So who remembers Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Oh, more than I thought. That's good. Who remembers this photo? Less. Did you not watch it, the people who put a hand up? So when I first watched it, this photo terrified me. If you remember, in the movie, Marty is sat there holding this photo, watching his future family that doesn't exist yet start to disappear in front of his eyes. And one of the things we want to challenge you today is if you were sat here holding the postcard of your future AI strategy, success, agent, whatever, is it going to start disappearing in front of your eyes because you haven't put the right foundations in? So, before we get started, who are you listening to today?
So, good afternoon to you all. I'm Alex Pearce. I'm from Softcat. Softcat are the largest IT reseller here in the UK. I am our chief strategist for Microsoft. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in Copilot, so I'm one of 12 Copilot MVPs in the UK. So, very much enjoying this whole AI space and what's kind of going on.
And I'm Andy Crossley. I am CTO of a company called Oakland. We are a data consultancy that's actually been around 40 years. I've not been part of that for the whole 40 years, just point out, even though we're talking about Back to the Future. And this is our 6th time at Big Data London. So it's great to see a very packed house and a very full auditorium once again. So just before we get into the details, I think most of you are probably experiencing some of this. You're seeing that we're now hitting a second wave of innovation with AI that started with innovation and sort of initial breakthroughs with LLMs, through to an explosion as that started to grab news headlines, started to build into public awareness. Even my wife, who has nothing to do with data, knows what an LLM is, she says. And then experimentation. And I think you just have to walk outside of these 4 walls to know that experimentation is obviously in full swing, full tilt, 100 miles an hour. That's what all the vendors out there are telling you. But the real value is starting to come through adoption into actual business process, the lasting long-term value. But that takes more than just the technology. So that's all good, and there are stats out there to back it up. So McKinsey has said that the data-driven organizations are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6 times more likely to retain customers, and 19 times more likely to be profitable. Great. McKinsey would say that because they're the ones helping you do it. So just to temper that excitement a little bit, we've also seen from Gartner that 65% of organizations still use data selectively to justify decisions. So put your hands up if you've ever been sat in a meeting where you've spent all that time and effort building the right report. You might even have some AI doing some of the clever stuff in the background, and the, let's say, leadership team are still sat there going, yeah, but maybe I'm going to go with this instead. Happens all the time. So just to back that up, MIT would say that only 5% of integrated AI pilots are actually extracting millions in value. I know there's been plenty of talks throughout the day, and there's more tomorrow, that talk about the ROI and the sort of perception versus reality. There are more stats out there that are starting to challenge the reality of the sort of the growth and the scale of the AI capability. So what are we seeing in reality? AI is great at building slides and random pictures, I have found, so it's good for that. Not all the slides are AI generated, but we're starting to see organizations trying to stitch together the digital and the medieval, is the way I'd put it. Trying to understand, hope, I guess, to get value from the advancements of AI by plugging it into really legacy data stacks, data sets, things that aren't qualified, they're not of high quality, and we're back to the crap in, crap out scenario. And historically, you wouldn't try and do that. You wouldn't build that type of capability without setting the right foundations. Now, I think, and we're seeing in some organizations, it's worse than that. Actually, people are trying to stick the rocket on the car, and they haven't even built the car properly. So they haven't put the foundations, the fundamentals in place to ensure the car even gets from A to B, let alone A to Z. And the trouble with that is, if you just stick the rocket on a car without all of that, we're just going to go around in circles. So we are seeing the agent capability explode. It's great in terms of what it can do, but is it really sort of setting you into the right direction in the future?
Of course, we're also here to talk about agents. And this agent phenomena that's kind of going on isn't just something we can just go off and do. We need the strong foundations of data to be able to go off and do something. We're probably not going to be a circus act agent that just goes off and starts doing things blindfolded with fire on their, whatever they're jiggling. So we need to have these strong foundations like your master data models and also some process governance to be able to go off and deliver these things. It's really important that we start to remember what those foundations of data are to actually help the agents to be able to go off and deliver. You often hear how agents are their kind of enthusiastic interns, but actually they're probably more superhumans that aren't trained yet to be able to go off and do things. If anybody's seen the film Shazam recently, and there's kids in there training similar to that, or maybe the X-Men, where they've got the students inside their X-home in the mansion training how to go off and do things. We need to give them the training, the foundations to be able to deliver things. But there are also other foundations that we can go off and do. Next slide, please. We have our growth. We want to be able to nurture our data and be able to build it in the right garden to be able to have that success. In Back to the Future, if you remember, Marty needed to get back to 88 miles an hour in his DeLorean. But at the same time, we had to have the lightning strike. But unfortunately, just before that happened, the tree fell down and the doc had to try and kind of couple in the power cable. We need to make sure that the conditions are right for our agents to be able to be deployed and to be able to deliver effectively. The Financial Times has said that fixing your data should be a key thing for digital strategy, especially now we've got agents. But at the same time, Gartner have come out and said that 40% of our agents are going to fail by 2027. So we need to avoid this. We need to make sure we've got strong master data models that we can go off, and we've got the governance, the compliance, and we're building these foundations for the agents to be able to sit on to effectively run. And this is the same kind of what happens in Back to the Future 2. Marty goes off into the future. He sees the future. He doesn't like it. By the way, the future was 2015, so that's a bit of a scary thing if you think about it. But he sees 2015. They're on hoverboards, and he's enjoying life. He sees it, but it's not quite the life he was expecting it to be. Don't build agents on data that actually hasn't been nurtured and thought of, because you might end up with something similar where you go off and you build a Rube Goldberg kind of situation here. If the marble isn't quite the right size, if it's too strong, it's going to break off the different pieces. So those YouTube videos that you watch as they nip through, we need to make sure that it's perfect so the agents can go off and deliver what they need to. As Tech Radar warns, agents aren't immune from historic silo issues. If you've got data issues now, agents are only going to elevate this and make this more into your organization. You'll see this more. So what's really important is to make sure that we don't necessarily have this agent sprawl. These agents that are going to go off and just do things for you without necessarily any control. I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later on.
I told you they'd get the Shazam reference.
There was one or two that we were worried about whether they'd be young enough to see that or not.
Well, you didn't get it, so.
No, I haven't seen it.
No. Don't ask Alex when he was born. So how do we put GenAI to work? There's a few sort of things we're seeing, a few myths we wanted to try and bust a bit today. So these are the sort of key mistakes we are seeing sort of in practice or in reality out there. We see a lot of, and not wishing to discredit people on the other side of the fence of this auditorium, but putting AI on a pedestal or sort of having it as that moonshot or silver bullet. Brilliant, exciting, love it, want to see it work, but it's a tool, not an objective. So what are you actually pointing at? Do you understand the goal or the business value you're trying to achieve with it? And is it focused on getting the right insight? We see, again, outside there, you've got two massive halls full of vendors, all doing lots of stuff, all doing similar stuff, all doing the same stuff. how do you navigate that as an organization? How do you make sure you're picking the right tool for the right job at the right time, given what you've already got as well? And getting lost in that jungle and selecting the wrong tech, I think is harder than ever. So carefully matching that technology choice to the intended user scenario, user benefit, but also the rest of the landscape you've already got or might need to build. Alex talked about it a little bit in terms of silos and creating isolated solutions that don't work or might get ignored, like you spin up a sales agent one day, everybody gets excited, and a week later nobody's using it. So how do you go what we call process native? How do you build process native embedded AI solutions that are actually part of everybody's day job, actually get used because it's there, it's part of a process that somebody already utilizes and has to work with? That is where you get the really deep transformation, the really long-term value from these solutions. We've alluded to the notion of building on sand and getting these foundations locked in. Poor resilience, inaccurate data, these are all problems that have existed pre-AI. I've been coming to most of these big data learnings for the last decade. Those data quality problems were talked about the first time I came. They're still being talked about 10 years later. It's just that now we've got a new shiny thing to put on top of it. And again, it's not a don't do it, but sort of be warned, ensure that that foundation is set and we're building on the right things. And design the entire pipeline to deliver that insight, not just an interface. And finally, scattergun. I'm sure most of you have been in conversations where literally everybody in your organization is creating an agent. They might be creating multiple sales agents in different teams all at the same time. Mm-hmm. So how do you bring that in control? How do you make sure you're aware of it? How do you govern it? How do you ensure that the right agent persists? It's a bit similar to thinking of recruiting 500 people in one go, but then putting no plan in place, no strategy, no controls, no document to tell them how to do their job, but hope it's going to work. It's not going to work. So focus on a narrow set of what we refer to as lighthouses to unlock the value, but build that momentum. So we think about data as the key input. The great thing about generative AI is I can now access and utilize way more of that data than I could have done previously, particularly unstructured data. And we talk a lot about the outputs, particularly the value. So how can I use generative AI capabilities on top of existing data capabilities to build better reports, make them faster, get more insight from them, put them in the hands of the right people at the right time? But all of it is about the value, the use case. And so what we think about is what we refer to as the data and AI toolbox. The bit you need in the middle, and often people have only gone after or building the generative AI bit of that. Actually, have you got all the other bits ready? Have you got all the other bits prepared to join up with the generative AI capability so that it might utilize that? An agent might use some of your existing analytics capability or BI capability to drive better outputs and longer-term value outputs.
But as you can kind of see here, there are plenty of tools that both sit in that pre-packaged and also that generative AI development. There's actually even more that are here, and the benefits of Softcat being a value-added reseller is that we can probably sell all these to you already. But actually, it's more important about the outcome and what we want to be able to deliver for you as a business to be able to drive these things. So, yeah, there's more than this. And if I'm honest with you, my preferred AI model, Claude's not even on this list from that point of view. Earlier on, I mentioned about this agent sprawl, and I started to think about on what this may well look like in the future. So one of the things that I started to think about is like, so what do the foundations kind of look like in a very brief way? So I kind of put this agentic side in there, and then I put the agents themselves. So briefly, I'm just going to show you, go through this, and then I'm going to deep dive into one or two of them. Agents, what platforms are you using? There's GCP, there's Amazon, there's Microsoft Azure. There's a lot of organizations now looking to bring it on-prem because from a cost point of view, it's now cheaper to run it in their own data centers. We need to make sure there's governance, we observe on what's going on, both with the data, but also how the behavior of those large language models are running. So that when the agents sit on top of that platform, you've got the models, the fine-tuning, the system message, and the action of what the agent's going to go off and do. But one of the things that I've kind of not seen very much about is lifecycle management with agents. How, if we've heard that 40% of agents are going to fail by 2027, how are you going to know when an agent is now at the end of life? And how do we then go off and say we need to upgrade the model, or we need to reset the model because the machine learning that's gone on with it's gone on too far? That's why observability is so important with these things. How are you going to observe how your agents and your data is transforming to be able to deliver this user productivity and team enhancements? But the key thing here that sits in both of these is data and governance. That's why that master data model, that's why the processing your data is so important, and the foundations that we've talked about is what's going to help elevate your agentic AI to improve their user and business processes and that business function and full business transformation for you in the future.
So I guess just to wrap up, like, how do we pull all of that together? And we think about a framework and all the elements that you need to make this right. That's a slightly simplistic view, but it's all about the value on the right-hand side. What are you trying to achieve? What's the business goal? Lots of conversations I have start with the organization, say, we want to do AI. Well, that's great, but what for? What's your overall business target? You're trying to reduce cost by 20%, increase revenue by 50%? That's the goal, that's the value you're trying to achieve. But I wouldn't be stood here talking about data and AI if we didn't reference actually the strategy, like the direction setting, where am I trying to get to? And that doesn't just mean a strategy, it means your operating model. Refers a bit back to what Alex was just talking about, of like how do those agents operate within your organization? How do they fit alongside your people? And what's the architecture to make that work? We've alluded to the data and how you access that, how you get that into the business or from source systems. Obviously, there are multiple options outside there that can help with that and design and build those pipelines. But ultimately, it has to sit inside that platform. And so we think it in again, a slightly oversimplistic way, but the data and AI has to work together in terms of ingesting, store, process, and serve to get to that value. And then finally, how have you built the underpinning capability to make that work, to make it last, to make it secure? The governance and compliance, data quality. And also the culture and adoption in terms of how are we going to start using these tools inside the organization we already have. Just super quick, we see a very typical process sort of emerge in terms of how we take organizations on this journey. It's not rocket science. Many of you will have seen this and operated before. How we define the problem to mobilize the right project. We talk about pathfinding, primarily because we found many people have got bored of proof of concepts as a title. So we talk a lot about proof of concept purgatory. They've sort of got caught in that never getting off a proof of concept and moving to production. But find the value, find the opportunity, and then build from there and build the momentum. Deploy it, get it into production, get it working, get it scaling, and start to expand that across the rest of the organization. And then finally, obviously, if you get that far, but you haven't done the embed bit, there is a danger it will fail. So if I come right back to the start, if you're still holding that picture in your hand, has it now started to fill in? Are all the people coming back with all their limbs? I did find a version of this where one of their heads was missing, which I thought might be a bit too extreme. But if you're sat holding that postcard now, given what we've just talked about, do you believe you've got the right foundations in place and you're sat there believing that your photo's coming back to life, or is it actually evaporating even faster? It is a scary thought when Alex said, 1984 was Back to the Future. They went all the way back to 1955, and in Back to the Future 2, they went all the way to 2015. We're 10 years ahead of that already. So these foundations are not necessarily new things, but have you got them fixed for your AI future? So hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully it's prompted some thoughts. If you want to come and talk about your future and filling in that postcard and making sure that your family members come back to life, we're on stand 60. We can come and help you have a think about that. And thank you for listening.